1, 2, 3, 4. If you can do all your stuff, what can figure it out? That's how it chooses you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our 100th episode.
Yeehaw! We did it.
We did it.
We're done, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yay! It's over.
We made it 100 episodes. It's crazy.
We did not expect this when we began, but it turns out Claire and I both really enjoy doing this, and so we're so glad you're here with us.
We are having a party. This is our party. Welcome. Welcome to the party.
If we had like sound effects of confetti or like a t-shirt cannon or something, or like people screaming on a roller coaster or water balloons smacking against people, like
I'm always just a fan of applause. That works for me.
And an occasional yeehaw, a surprise yeehaw in there. It felt like something was actually speaking through you in that moment.
Yes.
It's not a reaction I expected from you. We're throwing ourselves and you, mostly you, a party.
And the theme of the party is parties. We're going meta.
You know, like, we're angular sometimes. Sometimes we approach things from a really interesting trajectory, and sometimes we just put a fingertip on the nose of whatever it is we're talking about. And that's one of those today.
Who doesn't love a good party?
The definition of a party is that it's something it's possible for anyone to love. Maybe. I speak to the introverts out there. I'm not talking, we all like staying home. I'm not saying we don't like staying home. I'm not saying we don't prefer it even. Like, many of us out there would rather read a book than be out. However, a good party overcomes my desire not to interact with people.
Do you all want to know what Teresa's like at parties? She's incredibly entertaining for about 65 minutes. And then she looks at you and says, I gotta get out of here. And she leaves.
Uh-huh. And do you guys want to know what Claire is like at a party? Claire, first of all, hosts the party and has made all of the food for the party. And it's a beautiful display of incredibly delicious things lining her kitchen counters and tables and living room and everywhere. She is there all day long until the last person leaves, talking to everyone, creating the space for everyone to be there and be happy.
Oh.
She's in charge, man.
Thanks.
I admire your ability to do that. And I say it with a big smile on my voice because I know I can't do it. I should be like, would you all please fuck off? It's like 9:30.
Well, I have not hosted a party in a long time. One, because I live very, very far away. I do look forward to that day. But two, COVID.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it's what we're all craving. It's just a good time with good friends. And to that end, today, in a little bit of a deviation from our normal format, we've brought in some of our good friends and interviewed them about some of the best parties they've ever attended. We're excited to share all of that with you today as part of our 100th episode celebration. Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast, It Chooses You! Yeah!
Hello everyone. That beautiful person over there is Claire Patton.
And that beautiful person over there is Teresa Sparks.
On this podcast, she and I talk about things we love, things that have inspired and moved us, and things that make us want to change the world for the better.
Please remember to like, subscribe, and most importantly, download our episodes if you enjoy this. It helps us spread the word to other cool babies like you.
Yay! We wanted to let you know before we start this episode for you that we have a Patreon now. It's It Chooses You. You can find us there and support us if you like what we're doing. Thank you. I treat everything like I'm an alien who has been dropped on this planet and I have to figure out how people act. And when we come up against some, social situation that we want to talk about in a fun way, I become even more an alien who tries to read a book about a party to figure out what a party is. So I'm really excited to share that with you guys. Because I'm an alien who is studying human behavior, I went through many of our favorite kind of internet lists, like craziest parties, or listen to this list of wild nights and whatever.
I did the same thing. And I don't identify as alien, so.
On these lists, I was like, okay, what's actually interesting to me? Because of course there are music festivals, and of course there are food and beverage based festivals.
Of course there's testicle festivals.
Of course there are. But I don't want to talk about food or music or balls. That's fine. You guys enjoy that. That's too one note for me. We have to do a word origin because it's me. in Latin, festa means a religious holiday or feast. Okay, so there's spiritualism immediately, like in the word. We're relating to the divine in some way. From that root, we get festival and festoon. The French get fête, the Spanish fiesta. All the same thing. So we can expect to see a lot of food and music and some pursuit of the ecstatic, which is what we use alcohol for, self-transcendence. Looking at categories of modern festivals on these lists, there are some relevant, like really interesting categories of party.
I love that we're categorizing parties. Yes.
Okay. So, my two favorite are food fights and lifting things skyward.
Yep.
So the food fights I just love because it's adults doing it. And food fight is like that staple 80s school-based elementary, high school, junior high movie where, and then now there's a food fight in the cafeteria and it's this, moment of craziness in the middle of a very regimented day, right? And I love festivals that are based around or incorporate food fights because when adults do it, it's so much more interesting. Like, we're supposed to play with our food as children. That's how we experience food. Like, that's one of the ways we learn to, appreciate it. But, like, watching adults huck oranges at one another across a beautiful medieval square in a town in Italy, oh my God. You and I are going to take a trip to the Carnival of Ivrea. Ivrea. It's outside of Turin. This one in particular is interesting because, so I went to all the websites, right? And this website speaks about this thing so seriously. And they're talking literally about a part of this carnival they call the Battle of Oranges, where people huck oranges at one another across the square. And the website is so serious. And I love that, like treating something ridiculous very seriously. Oh, my favorite.
Welcome to Italy.
The website has a section called How to Behave. There's literally a page, like, how are you supposed to be when you get here?
How to conduct yourself in a food fight.
Because there have to be rules. It's not just a free-for-all. This festival, the Carnival of Ivrea, commemorates an uprising against a local lord, who was starving the city. I'm not going to get into, like, siege politics, right?
For once.
For once, she's not going to go there.
I was holding my breath.
Are we going to get an economic dissertation? Fingers crossed. This uprising was started by a miller's daughter named Violetta, because this local lord had decided he was going to reinstate the droit de seigneur, the prima nocta for those of you who like Braveheart. And so she was taken up to his castle, where she was like, hell no. She got him drunk, and then she stabbed him to death with his own sword.
Excellent. That is the only response.
That's the way you behave. And then she came back down and she's like, hey guys, I just killed him. And everyone's like, woohoo! And they partied in the street, and then the army came and put down the rebellion, et cetera, right? So there's this battle in the history of the city. There's like a day or two, but full days of festivities. And the list of things that these people are celebrating in this carnival, it's like an event from the Middle Ages, and then an event from the 1500s, and then an event from the 1700s. And it's sort of just like everything this town has experienced in the last 1,000 years is played out in a single day, and it culminates with the Battle of Oranges. The Battle of Oranges is the one based on the miller's daughter saying hell no and stabbing the guy to death. So it's the climax of the Battle of Oranges, which I don't think is a coincidence in their language. 9 teams are on foot. The oldest team is the Asso de Piche, Ace of Spades, which makes me laugh so hard that this is the oldest team. Okay, it was formed in like 1947. Teams of people hide around in squares around the village with buckets and crates of oranges. Additional people are in horse-drawn carts with buckets and crates of oranges, and the horse-drawn carts represent the soldiers that put down this uprising. And so the horse-drawn carts go through town, and they'll get to a square, and everyone will just throw oranges at each other's heads for 5 minutes, and then travel on. So it's a little bit like a passion play, like it has like the stages of this battle, but it's all played out in oranges.
Question, is it revisionist history? Because the uprising was quelled, right?
Like, I can't tell from the website, and I'm not a historian of anything. I was going to say of every tiny Italian village. I'm not a historian of anything. I'm sure someone from the town would very much like to tell us what this is about, and I'm equally sure that I don't care, because the image of people throwing oranges at one another is so delightful to me that I don't need more. They throw oranges at each other. Everyone is like bruised and bloody. On the website, they make very clear that they take good care of the horses, and the horses are not targets in all of this. It's like people shield them and things, so there's no like accidental animal cruelty happening. Except that the horses are like, I would really like to eat that orange. What the fuck is wrong with you? And they like keep trying, and they're like, no, you can't eat them. They're weaponry. You're ruining the play, horse. The horse is like, I'm not a union actor. I can do whatever I want. I want to go to this place and do this thing, both because I get to see, 1,000, 1,500 years of history of this town, and also because the sight of adult Italian men throwing oranges at each other delights me. The other amazing thing that I think is amazing, because I haven't heard of it before, is that on the Thursday of this thing, they wear Phrygian caps, which are those red, they have a little, rounded point at the top. It's basically the caps the revolutionaries in the French Revolution wore.
Okay.
To, prove that you're a revolutionary and not an aristocrat. And somehow they took that on, and that became a part of what they do. And in true Italian style, their website actually ends with a threat. You have to wear the Phrygian cap on Maundy Thursday. And the website says, it's always best to follow the rules to avoid any unpleasant encounters. I mean, to me that reads, wear a red hat or locals will steal your stuff and beat you up, right? So maybe don't go there unless you have a Phrygian cap available. The second one I just want to touch in on for a second is a festival near Valencia, Spain, called La Tomatina. All that I can find about it, it really just seems to be a matter of using vegetables to work out personal issues. It's like the vegetable war, but on a town scale rather than an international one. It's been held since 1945 on the last Wednesday in August. The last Wednesday in August in 1945 was about a week after word had spread around the world that the war was over. So I connect these two things for sure. And it's just a tomato throwing fight. That's literally it. You go into the town square, you throw tomatoes at one another. After about 2 hours, the fire trucks come in, hose down the walls of the town square, hose down all the participants, and then you go drinking. That's the party. And I think, maybe if we wanted to be the kind of people who make cultural, comparisons about cultures we're not in, it's the difference between Italians and Spanish, right? Italians are like, no, this will hurt you. Also, there are really intense rules, and the locals may rob you. And Spain is like, woohoo, thin-skinned tomatoes, and then everybody just gets hosed down after an hour and we go drinking. The best one, though, the best of the food fight kind of parties, is an event that's literally just called the wine fight. The wine fight is also in Spain, in Haro. Each year between the 27th and 30th of June, thousands of people come to this town to have a wine fight. And it's literally winefight.com. It's the website, okay? This is not my marketing. This is their marketing. The party starts on a Saturday night with music and dance floors set up and food vendors, and the bars are open and everyone's allowed to drink in the street, and they've closed off traffic, and it's just the village getting together, drinking and partying all night. The goal is to drink all night, dance with someone's granddad at about 4 a.m., and somehow keep yourself alive to get up to the top of a local hill, which is the battleground, where the wine fight starts at dawn.
At dawn, we wine fight.
I like to do things just to say that I've done them, and honestly, this sounds like a huge amount of fun. The person who wrote about it on the website I saw, which is, as I said, winefight.com, essentially is it's better if you try and climb the hill drunk, because you can't actually drive all the way up. There are buses that take people within about a mile of the battleground, but then you have to hike up a gravelly, muddy hill the rest of the way, and it's really just better to do it drunk rather than try and do it sober. And then tourists and locals get together, and you have a squirt gun. People line the path up to the top of the hill with squirt guns and little boxes of wine and things, so you can make your weapons as you go.
A wine Capri Sun.
Stabbing the wine straw through the bag. The tourists get those, but the locals have, driven barrels up the backside of the hill the night before. So they just go and they grab a pony keg full of wine, and this woman talks about a bunch of old men encircling her so that she couldn't run away, and then just pouring an entire barrel of wine over her.
Oh, God.
The locals are like, we do this professionally. Your squirt gun means nothing to me.
Yeah.
A little food, a little liquor, topped off with a sloppy, muddy, alcoholic fight, and then a day-long hangover the next day, I'm assuming. So that also sounds like fun. So that's another place you and I are going at some point.
That sounds wonderful.
So the lifting things heavenward category includes festivals I think it's Loe Krathong, which is Thai, and it means to float a basket. So it's baskets made of banana leaves and then very artfully decorated with flowers and beautiful patterns and colors, and then set float in the sea or in ponds and fountains and whatever, right? This is on the night of a full moon in November. They have this party.
That sounds so cool.
It's beautiful. All the photos of it are gorgeous. Please check it out. But the part of it I like the best is at some point in the festival, they have thousands of white paper lanterns that are heated by little tea lights that they light and send up. And so at a certain point, the sky is just full of these glowing square paper lanterns. And they float and they go away, carried on the wind, until the air inside gets so hot that they burn and fall, right? And so the tea light thing falls and the rest of it burns up. So just imagine like having this beautiful color, you know, and then everything is black and it's very high contrast, black and white, and these beautiful orbs raising up. Everyone on the ground sort of with their arms outstretched, letting it go and stuff. I mean, just gorgeous. Like, it's unclear what that celebrates, except like being alive. Like, isn't life great? Let's go float some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm down.
On that note, the Albuquerque Balloon Festival, oh my gosh, which this year is October 2nd to the 10th, so it's coming up. The best part of this is all of the high-speed footage that exists of these balloons being blown up and taking flight, because they look like rainbow seed pods inflating and then taking off, and they all shake. And then if you watch, they shake as they take off because it's high speed, right? And so like the little movements of the wind become like this crazy. If you're back far enough and you can see like 10, 11, 12, 20 of them doing it at the same time, when they raise, it's like molecules. I mean, it's just so interesting because they're each following their own particular currents of air, and then they're using the steering and the flame inside to do various things. It's totally gorgeous. But this is a party for people who like to get up early. Like, I was looking at the schedule and I was like, the first launch is at 6 a.m. and it takes how long to inflate the thing before that? Oh my God. The opening ceremonies for this thing are at 6:45 in the morning. So it's celebrating a different time of day. It's like, we think of parties as being evening time. And the balloon people, no, the balloon people need daylight for theirs. So they start very early. The last one in the lifting thing skyward is the Concurs de Castel, celebrated every 2 years. This is also in Spain, okay? Castel, right? Castle. It's a human tower. So it's people raising each other skyward.
Whoa.
Yes. And I sort of skipped by this one and wasn't too interested. I was like, oh, it sounds like a sporting event. And this is a competition, right? So like they've sportified it and made it something else. It's not just an expression of joy or, you know, just for fun. Like, we're going to have a better tower than you, essentially. The reason I went back and like doubled back and looked into it again is because the teams that make these towers are like 200, 300 people, because a large number of people need to be around the base, either swapping out, holding the weight, or helping keep it stable by pushing in. And so it's just a large number of people. And I saw an aerial photograph of one of these arenas, Claire, and the different groups of people dress in different colors. And so when you see them start to build a tower, it's like watching puddles of paint do anti-gravity drips up off the earth, like slow motion drips as they build the tower. Because they're making that shape, because it moves in that way, I got interested again. And I was like, oh, there's something molecular. We're doing something in a big scale that our bodies are doing in a tiny scale. My imagination was triggered. These towers are like 5, 6, 7 stories of people. So each like standing group of people is one. More than one tower is being built at a time. And so it's like a reverse lava lamp going up instead of down, of these different colors of people. Oh, just amazing. So
wow.
And they do it in an arena, like it's a competition. I think recently as many as 42 teams of people got involved to do these, and apparently making a 9-story tower is incredibly good. The record is 10. My gosh, so much fun.
And here with oddly another story about lifting things skyward in party form is friend of the podcast, carpentry wizard, all around wonderful human being, Jeffrey. Hi, Jeffrey! Jeffrey!
Hi, Teresa. Hi, Claire.
You're an interesting man with an interesting take on the world, and we figure at some point or another you would have gone to a cool party that you would be willing to tell us about.
Except, so I was straight edge when I first started going to college, except that I really didn't call myself that. But, you know, I wasn't like the partier, but I would go to parties. That was great because I was sober and I could like watch people and be like, whoa, that's crazy. But the funny thing is, I can't remember any of those parties.
Even though you were straight edge.
Maybe they weren't that interesting if you're not drunk. I don't know.
Maybe you would have remembered them better if you had been drunk. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, more. No, I was like, oh, I've been to some parties. Is anything standing out? Favorite party? That's tough. I don't know. But I do have one.
All right.
Coming through in a pinch. That's our Jeffrey.
Yeah. Okay, you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Totally ready.
Set the scene.
On tenterhooks.
So, driving from Northern California to Annandale, Virginia, with our maybe 2-year deceased father's worldly goods, my brother and I were, in a Ryder truck, like the biggest one you could get, and you always get your best ideas on the move, on the road. And he was like, okay, I just bought this, my wife, Jenny, and I, we just bought this house. It's our first house together. It has a 50-year-old garage. This was like 2000. Yeah, right around 2000. And the world hadn't collapsed, so people were still buying houses and moving on with life. And he's like, I got this 50-year-old garage, but it's up in the middle of the lot, right next to the kitchen. And we got this acre lot. I really want that to be a shed, and I want it to be in the back of the yard. How can we do that? And so we started talking. I think he pretty much came up with the idea that we would go down to the fiber optic cable company that happened to have a headquarters just like a mile down from his house, and ask them if we could borrow some giant wooden spools.
Yeah.
Okay. And somehow get this shed up off the ground enough and create some sort of axles. And we were like, yeah, the Egyptians did it. We could do it. We just need people power and, and ingenuity, caveman ingenuity. Come on, we can do it.
So the idea was that you guys were going to roll this garage across the property.
Pop it out of the ground just real quick, right? And then put it on rollers and send it across the yard. That took maybe, an hour and a half?
I mean, did you not consider a giant magnet? That's all I want to know.
Skyhooks.
Yeah, well, that crane could have been easy quicker, but not as fun. And we have an odd family history on our dad's side of moving garages. My dad and his father moved a garage, and I guess my uncle as well, on a property in Southern California when at some point they moved the garage across the property. So we were like, well, we can do it too, of course. We were like, okay, well, how are we going to do it? Okay, there's this cinder block kind of accessory room on the back of the garage. I guess we're going to have to knock that down now. But that just takes a sledgehammer. Great. Done. We were like, okay, well, it's attached to a concrete pad, so we can just cut that off somehow. And then how do we jack it up off the ground to get it onto axles? Okay, well, we'll put some cross bracing and get some bottle jacks and let's do it. And then we start clearing out this garage and getting ready. He's like, oh, this roof has a bunch of asphalt shingles. Those are kind of heavy looking. And he's like, do you think we should clear them off? I was like, that sounds like a lot of work. I don't know, man. Maybe you should just keep them on. And he's like, well, I'm going to take off a square foot of all the layers of asphalt shingles and weigh it and see how much that calculates. He came back out of the house with his eyes were open. He was like, we are taking those off. That's 5,000 pounds of asphalt shingles.
Oh, wow.
It was 4 or 5 layers. So I was like, okay, I'll work on the framing. You go up and do that. And he filled half of a dumpster with this. Yeah. Anyway, that was a good idea because it would not have happened otherwise. So the other part of the equation is well, yeah, we can get it braced up and jacked off the ground and on some kind of cable company wheel spools.
And then
how do we shove it across the lot?
Put an ad in Craigslist for oxen. Is any ox free next Saturday between 8 and 2?
Yeah.
We'll pay $50 and pizza.
Yeah. Bring your cow party. My brother had a much more genius idea, which was to throw a party.
Nice. I love the fact that your party story starts with really hard work.
Well, how are you going to enjoy your beer if you haven't sweat?
Yeah.
This was a brilliant idea. It was not just any party, but an Iron Man championship watching party. Who comes to these parties? Triathletes.
Oh my God.
That is fucking brilliant.
And this was at a time when my brother was like co-president of a triathlon club in the greater Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia area. Yeah.
Harness those motherfuckers up. Just put them in a line and wrap a line around them and have them pull.
Oxen who can't figure out how to clap on the same beat. Because all these Americans are like, oh, I have to be independent, and we're all going to, like, when you say push right, I'm going to push left. No, everyone played really nicely. But that's probably because they already had a couple beers, and they're like, oh, this is going to be fun. Let's move a garage.
Mm-hmm.
We had to hustle. The day of the watch party was coming, because this is back when TV just happened on a, in an actual day and a time. You had to be there, or you were missing the train. Way back in 2000.
If your senior band concert was the night of the finale of Cheers, you missed the finale of Cheers, motherfucker. It was dark times.
Brutal. But it all worked out so well because not only was this going to happen in the dark of night, no nosy neighbor could be like, no, wait, what are you doing? And if you lose anyone in the big push across the yard, you might not find them till the morning. The brilliant stroke was that like all this sweat was taken a few days, and we were like, we better go and ask for those spools so we can figure out how to make an axle. We drove down in the daytime, like before they, an afternoon before they closed one work day, and we pulled and we were like, hey, who can we talk to about borrowing spools? And they were like, you need to see Joe. He's in the garage in the back. And so we go to the back, and as we pull into this building we'd never been to and seen, we both just looked at what we were driving by, and we looked at each other, and we were like, no way. And right across from where we had to ask Joe about that, borrowing these wooden spools, were a collection of like a dozen decrepit chassis, just leaf-sprung chassis. So like regular car tires on an axle, and in between them were leaf springs. And there were a dozen of them just sitting there. We were like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Because that's what we need.
Hi, Joe. We're here to borrow that.
Hi, Joe. We were really dumb, and we were going to ask for wooden spools, but look what you have. Can we borrow those? And he was like kind of grumbly, and he was like, this is weird, and yeah, but we're not doing it. We're not using those, so you okay? And we had like a Toyota Corolla to put them on the roof of to take back a mile down the road.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And he was like, yeah, I don't know if any of those work. Good luck, but you can try them. Bring them back, on Monday. And we're like, sweet.
Did you tell Joe what you were going to do with them?
Oh, yeah, that hooked him. Because otherwise, he was like, no, you can't just borrow those. He was like, I might get a story out of this. And my brother said, hey, do you have a particular drink of choice? And he was like, oh, I like to drink scotch. Or I can't remember. Maybe it was whiskey. Whatever. My brother took note, and I was just like, okay, now I have to figure out how to strap these onto your tiny car.
Meanwhile, he's over there wheeling and dealing with Joe, and you're like hand-lifting chassis onto the roof of a Corolla.
Hey, Jeffrey, it might have been easier to just put the Corolla on the chassis.
Yeah, it might have been. Or maybe just the garage on the Corolla. Like, that could have done it. Yeah, so we got these were heavy. These chassis were beastly, and we got them somehow back to his house with this Toyota Corolla sedan. We got him back to his house. We're like, cool. Now we have to figure out how to attach these to this framing we built for this garage. Oh, the garage is still not off the ground. I guess we can do that tomorrow before the party starts. So that whole day I spent before the party started bottle jacking each corner like 1 inch at a time and hoping it didn't fall on me and like listening to the building and getting it up there. I was like, oh, this might happen. So the people start showing up for the party. I'm still like hot and sweaty and running around trying to get these things going and build little frames for these chassis leaf springs to rest on and hoping that they'll not break when they take the weight of the whole shed. And it's like a 1-car garage. It wasn't that big, but it's you couldn't just pick it up.
I love that you feel you have to justify that moving this building was actually hard. Yeah, we know. We know.
Time of the party, people started showing up, bringing dishes of food and beer, and they were ready for a good time. You're like, oh, what's going on?
Oh my God, you didn't tell them!
because they all had to pass it to get into the house. And it was like, well, guess what you're getting into? You're the mules. Hi.
Surprise! It's a surprise work party.
It's a surprise party, but surprise you're working.
If you are lucky enough and feeling inspired enough after watching the Iron Man show, you get to push this garage across the yard with us.
Oh my lord, I love it so much.
These folks were, mostly my brothers, and I was friends with them too, and we trained together and fought the battles of injuries and training for Iron Man. We'd raced Iron Mans together and stuff, so yeah, they were game. They were game people, and yeah, and they drank. They were drinkers, so why not?
Bunch of drunk athletes. Yeah, let's move this garage across the yard.
That's how the pyramids were built.
Is everyone just around the building pushing it? What's the situation?
At some point, I snuck away from the party or whatever. I still had all this work to do. I was always like this in college, last minute paper writing. I snuck away from the party and lowered the shed onto the chassis, and we're like, oh, it's maybe gonna work. Okay, these are gonna ride. Attach them so hopefully they wouldn't fall and kill someone. Break the legs off of these poor Iron Men. The base of it's probably 3.5 feet off the ground at this point. So it was up in the air, and if it fell, it was probably gonna fall in one direction, and Wicked Witch of the West, East, whichever one, dead. You're gonna have paralyzed Iron Man athletes. I was sweating bullets.
Now, did you handle it like a race? Did you issue them each a number at the start and then check it at the end just to make sure nobody got lost on the course? Or
we wish we were that organized. We were so behind the ball, and we were like, well, when are we? Okay, yeah. And then, there's that pile. Not only is there a big pile of dirt kind of in the way of our path, and there was also a grape arbor that was partially kind of in the way. We're like, we can take the turn. We can turn right away. I think I had to mound up some soil because the old foundation was a little higher than the grass level at first, and we were like, we don't want to get going. We don't want to just collapse off the first step. And there were a lot of small little things to think of at the last minute. I know that my brother gathered everyone around and said, okay, who's willing to do this? Let's get out and do it. It's ready. And so people were like, yeah. And basically, it was a loose organization of people, and we're like, let's all be around the perimeter of the building. And it was you didn't have to be right against someone's shoulder, but there was kind of enough people to be all the way around the four corners and some of the middles. And we started moving and saying, hey, if your corner kind of pushes to the left, will it move? And the chassis were so loosely rigged that they kind of played along with us, and it was like a giant heavy skateboard, maybe. Lawn skateboard. Yeah. The first thing that started happening was we need to put more dirt on this ramp situation so we can get off the slab of the old foundation. Let's take more dirt from that pile. That's good because we got to get around that pile anyway. And then we got close to the pile. We're like, yeah, we're moving it. And we got to shovel off more of the pile a little bit. So we could clear that. Yeah, we had to do actually a giant S-turn through his whole backyard to get it aligned. And it worked so much better than, we could have even imagined. It really worked. All we had to do is all talk and yell and hey, we're pushing forward, go. Okay, a little bit to the left. And people were laughing and probably holding a beer in one hand. And I'm sure, someone was wrangling kids to stay out of the way. And there were dogs. Yeah, people brought dogs. My brother had a dog. There were lots of bodies in motion, including this giant shed that had not been in motion for 50 years. Mm. And at that point, it was in pieces. Sure enough, we go through this backyard, and we had this big, final turn to make, and then course correct, and then get it aligned with the slab. And we shimmied, and suddenly we were like, yeah, everyone, this is where it needs to be. Yeah, and people had a blast, and the next day I lowered it. I guess maybe my brother was there too, but we lowered it down, and it fit right on this foundation. I mean, when they sold the house in, 2017, it was still there, happy as could be.
A testament to what driven people can accomplish.
Drunken people can accomplish, yes. Yeah. Drunken, driven people. Just feed them and beer them, and they will move mountains for you. I still talk about it. I was there. I'm sure all those people are like, that was fucking awesome party.
Yeah, totally.
I went to this party one time, and we moved a garage across the yard.
It's a party and an accomplishment.
Yes.
Yeah.
What a great story, Jeffrey.
And it's great to tell it again and have it recorded for posteriors.
Thank you so much.
So we've invited my partner and all-around wonderful person, Tim, here today to tell us about the most memorable party he's ever attended. Tim, thank you for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. What's going on, Sparky?
Hey, how you doing, Tim? I'm very excited to hear your story.
I think you know the story because I think you were a part of it.
Oh, dear. Okay, great.
My most memorable party was when we were living in Boulder. We hosted a secret house show during the Fringe Festival.
Yes.
This was back in 2014. For those who are listening and don't know, the Fringe Festival is a worldwide theater festival, so it takes place in many different cities at many different times, usually in the summer. Claire and I have both participated, Claire much more than I, in different Fringe festivals around the United States and Canada. The cool thing about Fringe festivals is that it is usually a lottery system, so people who want to participate enter a lottery, get chosen from a hat, and are able to travel and perform their theater shows to different crowds around the world. One of the cool things that has transpired from that is meeting a lot of super awesome theater artists.
Mm-hmm.
The one I'm going to talk about is a gentleman named, well, I don't know, gentleman is
Gentleman's
maybe
stretching, man.
too harsh a word.
A fellow.
Yeah, a fellow. Martin Dockery is his name, and he is an excellent, excellent guy. Performs primarily in solo shows, though he's done some group pieces that we've also seen. That year had traveled to Boulder to perform one of his travelogue shows where he talks about traveling to a specific place and entertaining people with his musings on that travel.
Martin is a wonderful performer, but he is first and foremost, in my mind at least, a brilliant writer. And he was known for these autobiographical, very approachable, very likable, funny, and profound shows about his own life. He had done this new type of show, which was completely fictional. And it was a real departure for him in that it was just him sitting at a desk and telling a story. And he had these incredible lights that and music that he was in control of, but it was just him sitting in a cowboy hat and telling a story into this microphone. It was mesmerizing and one of the most incredible pieces of writing I've ever seen performed. I had seen it maybe the year before and absolutely loved it. So when he came to Boulder, actually I thought a lot about you, Teresa. I thought, wow, there's such a thriving writing culture in Boulder that there are some people that I just want to see this show and hear these words.
Claire was kind of gushing to Martin while he was in town about her enjoyment of the show. And he's like, well, it just so happened that I have the entire kit for that show on me. The lights, the microphone, the cowboy hat, all of it. Claire came up with the brilliant idea of basically fringing the Fringe Festival and inviting Martin to perform the show. Now, the thing listeners need to know is at the time when we were in Boulder, we were living in a single-wide mobile home. And if you've ever been into a single-wide mobile home, it is not the most spacious spot you can think of.
It's a spacious and comfortable auditorium.
Claire invites Martin to perform the show in our single-wide trailer, and we decided to kind of make it a party before and after. Hosting that party was delightful. I can remember getting ready for the party and
rearranging the furniture.
Yeah. We set up the writing desk that we'd had in the living room as the desk he would perform on, and then just clearing all the furniture and trying to arrange anything that anybody could plop a seat on.
I seem to remember viewing it from your dining table. I think that's where my butt was.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, we just had a mix and match of chairs and benches and
Windowsills.
I think there were even people outside on the patio watching through the window.
Mm-hmm.
All in, I think we crammed 40 to 50 people into our single wide trailer. The name of the piece is called The Dark Fantastic. The tone of the piece is so resonant and strange, and his voice is just something else.
It's a very atmospheric piece.
Quiet, intense.
And I think we decided to show it at 11 or 12 at night because that seemed most appropriate and was, frankly, during a festival also when people were available.
Yeah, exactly. The midnight show.
We had all our friends and fellow artists and patrons and fans of the festival that we were throwing in Boulder all show up and cram in kind of a cool September night. We had to have for the most part, the windows shut, and we had blacked out some with curtains and stuff so that the lighting worked well. I just remember our trailer starting nice and cool and then just getting this humid, human kind of vibe as kind of a wombish quality to the room as this piece was going on, and the whole sense of it was just magic to me. The energy in the room was great, and then after this really atmospheric piece, just being able to blow off a bunch of steam with a lot of friends and loved ones well into the night was just the most fun.
I remember us being so quiet. For all the people in that space and crowded around it, I remember it being so quiet while we were watching. It was entirely, I mean, he totally led us down a path. I mean, he was an amazing performer that night and other nights. Martin's great. But yeah, that show was really intense. Not unpleasant, right? But the darkness was there and we were quiet and everyone sort of agreed to be in that place with it. It was pretty amazing.
That is my favorite party experience. The fact that it was a shared experience for everybody and not me sitting in a corner being an introvert at a party is one of the reasons why it's so memorable for me.
So thank you, Martin, for that.
Yeah. And thank you, Tim, for coming here to tell us about the party.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you.
In true It Chooses You fashion, I couldn't just think about successful parties. I thought about party disasters.
Yeah. Yes, the best kind.
I read a lot of stories about, Byzantine parties in the 12th century that ended up as a huge conflagration of people dying, horrible things. I didn't want to go that dark. What I did naturally find myself drawn to was the idea of gender reveal parties.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of disasters.
I think everybody knows the idea is that people reveal the gender of their baby, and I think in most cases discover the gender of their baby through some sort of extravagant gesture.
Yes.
I hate baby showers.
Yeah.
And so this is like the pre-baby baby shower.
You're not going to know the gender of your baby until it's way born. Right? Like you can know maybe the sex of your baby and that's it. So the foundation of it is a misunderstanding. It makes me angry.
Yep. That is absolutely true. And we're going to get into that a little bit. Your kid isn't even born yet. And I've had to now attend 2 parties for them. And they're just awful. And I think with social media, we've become such a visual culture. And there's also this culture of one-upmanship. These posts on social media, this is how we gain attention. We've all heard the horror stories. Everyone trying to one-up each other and get some good footage for social media. One couple in Florida had their pet alligator bite a balloon that was filled with a pink dust to reveal that their child was a girl. And the latest trend has been, for some reason, probably because we're American, explosions.
Yes.
In 2018, a couple used explosives to reveal their child's gender, and the explosion lit the nearby brush on fire, starting a wildfire that burned almost 47,000 acres of public and private land in Arizona.
Oh my God.
One person who's been particularly horrified by this explosion trend and by where the gender reveal trend has gone is Jenna Carvanidis, who is the woman widely credited with the invention of the gender reveal party.
Oh my.
Back in 2008, she had a successful lifestyle blog, and she decided to have a party to reveal the gender of her child. So she cut into a cake to reveal that her child was a girl. Looking back now, she really regrets the way that gender reveal parties have evolved. And her daughter, whose gender was revealed at that original party, is very much not a girly girl. She actually wears suits quite often. Jenna says that now she's learned that gender is more fluid, and how these parties define it is limiting. You're defining gender as binary, those are the only options, and that's your child's gender no matter what.
Right.
Obviously, gender, we know, is quite a bit more fluid than that. These parties are terrible on two levels, right? There's like the cultural level and the, I don't know, death destruction level. If something's terrible on two levels, maybe the amount of personal joy and attention we receive from it isn't worth it. No, don't do it.
Like, I understand maybe wanting to know, just in like the same way if you have a present that's, is for you and you're going to get to open it at a certain point, maybe you have anticipation about being able to see it or know what it is. Like, okay. But of all the things a person can be, like, their gender is very important, obviously, but is it the thing you care about it before they're even out? Like, that's the thing you want to tie down first? I find that very interesting. I'm on board.
I continued researching, and I found something truly delightful, which was a piece in which HuffPost contacted parents about the most wonderful, delightful, crazy party themes that their children had ever requested for their birthdays.
Speaking of Byzantine, I want to be the Emperor Justinian!
That's right. I bring you some highlights of wonderful birthday party themes children have picked out. Grayson, a Louisiana toddler, requested a personal injury lawyer Morris Bart party for their second birthday. Morris Bart is a local attorney who has commercials on TV. So the child requested a party with the theme of this personal injury attorney.
Oh my God.
The photo of this party is great. The kid is wearing a t-shirt with Morris Bart, attorney at law, on the t-shirt. Next to the child is a framed and signed photo from Morris. There's a life-size cutout of him and a cake with Morris Bart's photo printed on it.
Oh my gosh, the best party.
When Kimber turned 5, their parents threw a Costco-themed party. They served Costco pizza and had a Costco cake that said Costco on it.
So it's like the sporting event thing? Like, this is the Coors marathon of whatever, corporate sponsorship for child's birthday party, but chosen by the child. It makes me very happy.
This is Kimber's 5th birthday, brought to you by Costco. Missouri toddler Audrey, at age 3, requested a poop-themed party. At age 4, a kid named Carter had a Geico-themed party. Eliza, when age 2, had a Golden Girls birthday party.
Oh my God.
I mean, talk about the coolest 2-year-old on the planet right there.
It's so cool. Yeah. I want to have a Golden Girls theme party now.
I know. Some other themes of note. Duct tape. Ear.
just ear?
I'm just imagining those parents going to a bakery and saying, we need a cake in the shape of a human ear. Don't ask. Elevator.
Just elevator. That's great.
Garbage.
Are these kids just looking around the living room? What do you want your theme for your birthday to be? And they look around. Lamp themed.
Dentist. Tornado.
Ah.
And Kathy Lee Gifford.
How does your child know who she is, first of all? And why does she like her enough to want her birthday party to be themed that? What is going on in that house?
I don't know.
Okay.
And finally, Teresa, my favorite. If this podcast had a baby, it would be this child who wanted the Titanic and the Edmund Fitzgerald, which is a freighter that sank in Lake Superior in the 70s. The Titanic and the Edmund Fitzgerald on their birthday cake. Not only did this kid want those ships on their cake, they wanted the cake to show the ships in the process of sinking.
It's not a memorial. I'm not just trying to remember them. I want to watch them go.
The child and the parents compromised, and the cake ended up depicting only the Edmund Fitzgerald sailing, not sinking.
That's a great compromise. Good job, parents.
That kid is the coolest and will definitely grow up to be a listener of this podcast.
I love those kids.
That's what their world is. It's what they see on television or what's in their immediate... Why not have a human ear birthday party? Ears are important.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember my sister loved Barbies, and she made a cake around a Barbie one year.
I had one of those when I was a kid. The cake was the dress, right?
Yes, exactly. How did that idea get around? How did that idea get from West Virginia to Texas without the internet? Who invented the Barbie cake dress? Write in itchoosesyoupodcast@gmail.com. We need to know. To share a story of her favorite / best party, we have invited back on the podcast the amazing Liz Acosta, finest teacher of art in all the land, and now only 4 short months away from retirement, a fact that she celebrates every single day.
Hello, Liz! We just want to hear about the best party you've ever been to.
You know, I think the best party I remember is actually a conglomeration of several really good parties that fell under the same banner, which were the New York City animation crowd parties. Well, I still have good friends who were animators in New York, and in fact, Brian still has his company. So I got invited to these parties that were often in loft businesses and loft settings, you know, in New York City, Lower Manhattan. This is before I moved, so like early 90s.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll start with how I remember the party, but I still think it's a conglomeration of several of those parties because you were in an altered state at some point in the evening, right? So
if it was a good party, yes, you were.
So I'm at one of these loft parties, and it's the animation crowd because we're going to parties with Brian and his wife Nancy, who are 2 of my dearest New York City friends. We go upstairs, and they had a live band at this party. Like, you know, drum kit, the whole bit, and everybody's like facing the music and like into it. Probably had a couple of drinks before I got there, so I'm kind of mellow. Friday night, you know, everybody's like ready for the weekend. So from behind me, I hear some, you know, the music's going, and I hear somebody go, Liz Acosta. So at that time, I still had my married name, which was Liz Birmingham. Believe it or not.
I don't believe it, and I never knew that about you.
That's my married name.
No.
So the person says, Liz Acosta, and right away I know it's somebody who's known me for a long time. And I turn around, and it's this tall redhead guy that I went to college with in DeKalb, Illinois, whose name was Bob Cormack. He has since legally changed his name. And it was him. And like, we probably hadn't seen each other in like 15, 17 years at that point, something like that, you know. So it just made that party so great in that moment. Like, I was having a great time anyway, because it's this great crowd of creatives, you know, in New York, and then I turn around and it's Bob. So there was a lot of catching up that happened, and so this is where I think this is a different party, but it's the same kind of general crowd. It's another party that Brian and Nancy invited me to, the animation crowd, and big loft, and everybody's dancing, and it was the studio that did the 3D animation portion of Pee-wee's Playhouse. The 3D versions were hanging above you while you're dancing, like the playhouse and the little Pee-wee on the little, you know, scooter.
Oh my God.
And then there were insets in the windows along the edges of like the 3D figures they used in the animations. You know, remember in the opening credits, a little cherry and you know, things like that. I probably went to a lot of parties in New York, but I don't remember a lot of them.
This was probably at Wayne White's place. Or he was probably there, at least. He's the one who did all the puppetry.
That's very likely then, yeah.
And he was like the art kid that sort of envisioned Pee-wee's Playhouse. There's a documentary about him called Beauty is Embarrassing. I highly recommend it. It's really fun.
Oh, I want to see that because, well, I love Pee-wee. this can now be a tangent and a takeoff on with Pee-wee as a subject, because I love that stuff. And I was living in New York when it first started, and the way I got invited, two little kids knocked on my door, my landlord's kids, knocked on my door on a Saturday morning and said, "Will you come and watch this TV show with us?" And so I'm like, it's Saturday morning, my day off, and I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, So we go upstairs to their house, and it's Pee-wee's Playhouse, and I'm like stunned, going, this is so cool, So the day I got to see like all this stuff in, the studio and all that, it was really special. This is very special to me. So in the background, what's going on is that it's a big free-for-all New York style, like everybody's crammed into this space, but it's a loft, which is fairly big, but because it's New York, there's a lot of people there. Yeah, people just making connections and having a good time. My friends, introducing me to their friends, and Nickelodeon people, I think, were in this group of friends that Brian and Nancy had.
I love this idea that Liz was at so many awesome parties. She's like, I can't keep this straight. It was just such a magical time. I believe it was the one where I was hanging out underneath all of the models for Pee-wee's Playhouse animated shorts, but I don't remember. It could have been the one where I met David Bowie. I mean, I'm sure at some point.
No,
right?
I never met David Bowie. Although the jobs I had in New York City, having been an art major kind of person who came to New York, were art supply stores. Like, that's where we all knew we could get a job at art supply stores. So a lot of my friends worked at them. And then these are like little communities of people, because eventually people quit and went to the other art supply store, and they all were intermingling, and meshing together. And so there were a lot of good parties in that group too. One of the art supply stores I worked with was right down the street from Carnegie Hall. And, that's a high rent district, right? There's a lot of people living in that area. Right at the south is Central Park and Carnegie Hall and, major midtown area. And we used to jokingly, but truthfully, call ourselves the art supplier to the stars. Because so many people came in. And David Bowie did come in. I mean, I could go down the list of like people I waited on. Andy Warhol to Fred Gwynn, Herman Munster.
Fred Gwynn is more impressive.
One of my favorites was Senior Wences, who, if anybody's young, they won't know who that is. We were little kids. Senior Wences was always on Ed Sullivan. And he had this little puppet that he made, little fist puppet that the lower, your thumb moves and it makes the moving mouth, right? And then there was a body underneath it, like with a little tuxedo on, who used to talk. Well, Senior Wences comes in, and I wait on him, and I'm always a little nervous when I wait on the stars. I gave him back his change, and in his hand, and at the same time I'm saying, Senior Wences, I grew up watching you on Ed Sullivan, and I'm so thrilled to meet you. Thank you so much for all you've done. And he took the change in his hand, and he made it disappear in the air. I know, it was like so cool.
He's like, I'm going to thrill this woman right now.
I'm going to give her a thrilling thank you right back. But, in New York, it's a party atmosphere very often, just when there's a large gathering of people. If it's like, we're all going to get together and we all kind of know each other, we all know people who know each other, like often I was with like these animation folks I was a friend of coming along for the ride, so to speak. But yeah, people like got together and went out for drinks, and then they said, let's go dancing. And then, you go dancing, and it was like a big party. Didn't feel so much like clubs. They were more like intimate kinds of settings, not so big, and maybe 75 people dancing in a room, all post-cocktail hour or other substances. So, I don't know, maybe I wasn't such a party girl. Or they all go to get kind of mushed together as one.
It's one big party.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, Liz. Teresa, we had talked a little bit before we started recording this episode about how you were expecting to find historical evidence of a party that, united the whole world.
I was trying to take a macro look at this. I expected there to be something for the moon landing, but no. There's no global phenomenon of parties for that. The New Yorker article about it is a collection of snippets that New Yorker writers like were in bars listening to people as they were, watching the moon landings. And most of them were like, yeah, who cares? Or like, turn that off. Turn the jukebox back on. And I was like, oh, it was not. It was not a worldwide phenomenon at all. It turns out the disinterest in science is not a new thing. So I think the closest thing that I could find was the VE Day parties after World War II, right? So VE is Victory in Europe Day. Trying to get into the VE Day thing, I wanted to find a person's experience of it because I can imagine what it was like, but hopefully we will never have that kind of experience again because the world will not be at war again. And there's, it turns out, a famous photo of 2 women and 2 men in Trafalgar Fountain on VE Day. They have their arms around each other. They're sort of standing in a line. All of their pants are rolled up and they're smiling and they're just having a great time playing in the fountain. And it looks like the Imperial War Museum, which thank you for existing. There's a lot of really interesting content there. Put the word out that they had this photo and they were trying to find out who these women were for some sort of anniversary of this celebration. It sounds like they heard back almost instantly. They sent out one little note and they were like, we'd really like to know who you, and then someone was tapping them on the shoulder from behind. Hey, that's me. I'm Joyce. This is my friend Cynthia. They'd just been waiting for someone to notice this photo. Sometimes it's a mystery and it takes detective work. And sometimes the women are just standing right behind you waiting for someone to get curious. Joyce Digny and Cynthia Cavello met in the Women's Land Army, working on farms in Surrey in the summer of 1944. Joyce was 18 and Cynthia was 20. They'd heard about the armistice parades after World War I, and they knew that if they won the war, there was going to be a really big party. And so they decided, if they were still alive at the end, they are going to go to London and be a part of the celebration. Victory in Europe was announced on May 7th, which was a Monday. The following day was declared a public holiday. On the morning of May 8th, Churchill asked for assurances from the Ministry of Food that there were enough beer supplies in the capital.
Hey, look, guys, this is going to be huge. We need to make sure there's liquor. Otherwise, it's going to turn into something tragic.
Somehow Churchill has become the happiest voice of alcoholism for us. Every time we reference him, it's about him understanding how important liquor is. Joyce and Cynthia took the early train into London. They stopped at St. Paul's Cathedral to say prayers for their family and for friends they knew and lost during the war. And then they headed out to party.
Go to church first.
That's right. Go to church, cover your bases, and then go to the pub. In a letter that Joyce wrote to Cynthia's family, sort of after, I think Cynthia died in the 80s, and so they were sort of on this anniversary or whatever, they were sort of getting back in touch and reminding each other of experiences. In 2006, she wrote this letter, and she sort of captured it by saying, we walked all over London, and unless you were there, you can't possibly believe the amount of euphoria. Everyone was hugging and kissing and smiling and laughing, and my take on it, everyone just allowed themselves to love one another for a few hours. She said it was like a gigantic family coming together.
Oh, that's so touching. Oh, getting teary.
They got to Trafalgar Square, which was basically the center of this nationwide party. And Joyce said that they tried to go into a bar that was crowded to overflowing. And they had beer, as Churchill made sure. This is why he's the best prime minister there ever was. They had enough beer, but not enough glasses. So she says, Cynthia and I managed to get 2 glasses from people who had finished. They didn't wash anything. They just filled them up again and handed them to new people.
And nobody's got time for that. We got a party. The Nazis are dead.
Nazis are done. Everybody gets drunk. That's how it goes. Telephones weren't in common use. The radio existed, but television didn't. And so I love this image of people on this day running from house to house sharing this news. Who in town has a radio? They hear it first, and then they just knock on doors up and down their street, and then everybody goes and tells their families, and then those people tell. Passing the news word of mouth style is part of what makes this so charming. Because it's not like you just get told and everyone knows the same thing. There's a timing to it. So presumably there were farmers who didn't live near enough a village who didn't understand the war was over for hours or days after. Yeah. And he comes in and he's like, why is everybody so happy? Hey, it's over. Oh my God. Why didn't anyone come out and tell me? You jerks. That letter that she writes, I think, helps us learn what a party is. And we know that it's true somehow because we both teared up when we were reading it. So on that day in London, thousands and thousands of people made themselves available to other people for connection. They did it overtly, consistently and for a considerable duration of time. And this is Teresa being an alien trying to understand what a party is. Like, it's not just, hey, you have a flash moment of being nice to somebody in the street. You are available to be nice to everybody. And that is a choice you have made for the day. So maybe we can say that's what a party is. It's a collection of people who are willing to share a positive experience together. And if we think of them that way, I think we can see why parties involving 20-year-olds are maybe a little different in feeling to parties that involve a lot of 40-year-olds. We have different desires and different levels of curiosity for the kind of experiences we might want to share. In your 20s, you go to every party. What might happen at a party? You're excited and curious and you don't know, and that unknown drives you to go and interact and have a good time. And in our 40s, maybe there's less excitement for the unknown. I'm pretty sure I know what's going to happen at that party. I don't know if I need to go there, although it has been a while since I've talked to Jeff. It might be worth going just to talk to him for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the decisions are different. It's not like what might happen. It's like, I'm pretty sure I know, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to like it. That's why I go. There's a movie that I love a lot. It's called Kicking and Screaming. It was written and directed by Noah Baumbach. We're going to talk about it on the podcast at some point. I'm going to ask you to watch it with me. It's about 4 friends who graduate from college but refuse to move on. In one scene, they're all at a bar deciding what they're going to do with the night, and one of them suggests going to a college bar that they used to go to when they were in college. And the grumpy character, Max, says he can't go to the Hole, this bar, because it would be too nostalgic. And another character is like, what are you talking about nostalgic? We graduated 4 months ago. And he's like, I'm nostalgic for conversations I had yesterday. I can't go to the bar because I've already looked back on it in my memory and I didn't have a good time. So he's like 20, but he's putting on this 40-year-old attitude. So, you know, we have different expectations and desires for parties depending on where we are in our lives, which is totally normal. But this VE Day party, if you have shared misery with people, and London and England did. It was hard times during the war. And the cause of that misery is removed. A celebration could actually be necessary to create an experience of shared joy instead, and to express relief. You're basically rewriting the cultural code you've been living under. Here are the rules now, but let's have a moment and a giant party, and let's everyone drink and, you know, approach that ecstatic self-transcendence that alcohol provides to try and rewrite the rules now that it's over. With that in mind, I, of course, go to sociologists and anthropologists. Please tell me why I do these things, sir. Emil Durkheim, my favorite sociologist ever, he called parties collective effervescence. He says that when people start moving in a shared, directed experience, a current of excitement starts pulsing through them. Like, it literally connects us when we do that. There's an article in The Cut by Drake Bear where he quotes another sociologist, Dimitris Xygalatas. So Dimitris Xygalatas says that in the past, a shaman would have carried people through this ecstatic experience. But today, that's the role of the DJ, or the winemaker, or the balloon inflator, basket maker, orange thrower, etc. He also added empirical weight to this argument that he makes. In 2011, he rigged biomarker like trackers on village people on the night of a firewalking festival in Greece, where the locals say that the Emperor St. Constantine possessed the firewalkers as they danced across the coals. So the ritual was emotionally aligning, he says, for the entire community, as indicated by the synchronization of heart rates as people watched the spectacle.
Wow.
People who were closer socially already to the firewalkers, relatives and friends, they had greater synchrony of heart rate with them, but it wasn't just them and everyone else was out part of it. Everyone watching it had some sort of collective movement in rhythm like that. Mm-hmm. So he says ritual is actually a social technology. There's a communicative aspect, sure, but it's also primordial and instinctive to follow and be driven by a rhythm together. I really recommend that article. That was great. This following a rhythm and being driven by it, the desire for that experience could actually be what drives us to go to parties in the first place. That we might get that. Because we're like in kind of a ritual-starved environment now, right? We have to really make our own.
We are. It's true.
That's my alien's approach to what a party is and what we might expect at one. And we hope that we're creating something that you guys can refer to as a party and that your heart rate changes to be in sync with ours when you listen.
Yeah.
Claire and I use a lot of different sources for the stories we tell each week, and if you want to check those out, there are links to all of the articles and research we've referenced on our website, itchoosesyou.com. Go check it out.
That's it, everybody. That's our 100th episode extravaganza. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We will be back Sunday with yet another smidgen, with some kind of cultural delight for you.
Thank you so much for being my partner in this. This is a huge amount of fun, Claire, and I'm really glad we do it. I love you, man.
I love you too, man. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Testing. Great. Thank you for listening to It Chooses You. Your hosts are Teresa Sparks and Claire Patton. Our theme song is by Bobby Dart. If you'd like to get in touch with us, drop us an email at itchoosesyoupodcast@gmail.com.